St. Paul, writing to the Romans, warns of the consequences of living in darkness, the death of the soul. We carry around our inner world, and if our inner world is putrid, no matter how much money we spend on a luxurious holiday, we cannot buy joy. I was in retreat this week and also giving a retreat in the monastery in Holland, Adoration, and one cannot but observe, as one goes through these big airports, how people spend vast sums of money calculating joy. A great world wild goose chase. In fact, it's rather like what happened in around 1957 when Jacques Fesch wanted to get away from it all but needed money to buy a yacht. So decided to go into the act of robbing enough to get it. He was tracked down, and a policeman was starting to confront him, but he himself was armed and shot. The result was that he was actually guillotined. It's an interesting case because he wrote from prison, and we see actually how, in some cases at least, the capital punishment, especially of guillotining, which is pretty gruesome, can have, on the level of eternity, a salutary effect. He met his Creator in prison. He had a complete roundabout turn, so much so that it has been questioned whether his cause should be introduced. But in that prison cell, at the eve of his decapitation, that man knew what he didn't know when he was free. Joy coming from deep peace. He had thought that by acquiring certain things and going certain places, he could actually create joy and freedom. He only found atrocious bondage, whereas behind bars, with Jesus, he had both freedom and joy. Because joy cannot be there without one simple, essential ingredient: peace. I make a jump in time further back to this Emerald Isle. In the penal times, something not dissimilar to what happens now in modern conditioning to believing certain things, subtly but efficaciously, was going on there, probably spurred on by the same satanic force, which hates divine grace and the means of it, the one true church. It was fairly simple: become an Anglican. The rest would follow. Very clever means were invented to make sure that it was almost impossible to have access to the sacraments for certain periods. There one sees who were the shepherds of which the gospel speaks, and who were actually the poor, and who the rich. I quote this from one who would not leave the flock, even though Parliament had ordered all bishops to leave the land. Bishop Brennan wrote after St. Oliver's martyrdom, "The Catholics of the kingdom for many years past, and particularly since 1678, lived amid incredible hardships. The laity, on account of their Catholic faith, being incapacitated for holding any office, public, military, or civil, and the ecclesiastics even more than the laity, being assailed by the fury of our adversaries. Notwithstanding the perversity of the times, the Archbishop, that's Oliver, remained always in his residence." That was, by the way, what he could find, a simple cottage. "And though concealed, he contrived to maintain correspondence with his Vicar General and with the leading gentry in the district, instructing and directing the former as to the due watchfulness and solicitude for the salvation of the flock, and comforting the latter to remain firm in the ancient faith, and fervent in the practice of patience and the other Christian virtues, amidst such miseries and tribulations." Now, in practice, it would have been possible for the laity to practice fairly easily the form of praise and worship proposed to them, and they could keep their land. But it was not if they insisted, and so they became landless, essentially. They say that the travelling community now in Ireland is the result of that. But massively, they would not abjure. Somehow they knew the issue, that their soul meant far more than even life itself. In our day, essentially, notion of soul and of its destiny has been cancelled from the equation. Cleverly, indirectly, but efficaciously. Essentially by one great ploy of the demon. Make sure that they don't face their conscience, that very ingredient which we cannot avoid if we want joy. And so, look around, and what has he done to make sure it doesn't happen? A complete insistence that there is not a pause for interiority, a complete contamination of the mind by other minds, absence of interior liberty. We are led by the tip of the nose without realizing it. We are told what is correct and what to believe. It's the same thing in a different form. As regards the pastors of souls, there the demon knows full well that if he hits there, he's got the flock as well. Make sure that the pastor does not have contact with the flock. I mean soul to soul. Do anything but have a priest with young people, children especially. Do anything but have a priest spend time in the confession box. Anything, as long as he's not in one-to-one with the immortal souls entrusted to him. And then the devil will come himself, become their master, using the tools that he has invented, which are in everybody's pocket to this day. I conclude. There are good pastors of souls. Our diocese is blessed We've had many years of one of the best bishops in Ireland. Bishop Smith would always write back by return. He would easily be available on the phone. He would have time for you immediately. He cared for the one-to-one. He had no notion of computers and the things that went with them. He didn't want to, but he had time for the one-to-one. True pastors are rare, but the precious boon that we need in our day.